You're nothing without me. The words flew across the kitchen table like shards of glass, sharp enough to sting my skin though she hadn't laid a finger on me. She said it with her lips twisted, the way she always did when she wanted me to feel small. Don't look away. This isn't just a story, it's a life turned upside down. Stay with me until the end because every twist will hit harder than the last. I didn't flinch this time. Not with my hands wrapped around the chipped coffee mug, its warmth steadying me. I lifted it slowly, calm as ever, and sipped, letting the bitter taste of yesterday's coffee sit on my tongue. My silence unsettled her more than any shouted reply could have. She thought she still owned me. That's the part that almost made me smile. The clock on the wall ticked toward 6:30, each second dragging against the hum of the refrigerator. The morning light hadn't fully broken. Gray shadows still hugged the curtains and the smell of burned toast lingered in the air. I'd been awake since 4, nerves buzzing in my stomach, rehearsing the moment when she'd try to strip me down with her words again. But I wasn't the same woman she used to break. She didn't know that yet. Her eyes narrowed. You sit there smug, but don't forget who put food in your mouth all those years. Who kept a roof over your head. You think you've outgrown me? You haven't. You'll always crawl back. Her voice rose, bouncing off the thin kitchen walls. My fingers trembled slightly around the mug, but I pressed it firmer against my palms to steady myself. She saw trembling as weakness. What she didn't see was the quiet fire running beneath my skin. I leaned back in the wooden chair, its legs groaning against the linoleum. Is that so? My voice was soft, almost casual. I knew it irritated her more when I refused to match her fury. She slammed her fist on the table, rattling the sugar jar. Don't play games with me. You've got nothing. No money, no stability, no one who cares. Without me, you'd be out on the street begging. I glanced at her, then at the window where a thin line of orange had begun cutting through the morning gray. If only she knew. If only she could see the truth hiding just outside her reach. But I wasn't ready to hand it to her yet. Let her stew a little longer. I shifted my gaze back, watching the fine cracks in her skin as anger flushed her cheeks. Her fingernails, painted in a dull pink, dug into the wood of the table as if she could claw her way back into control. A car passed outside, tires hissing on the damp road, reminding me that the world was still turning beyond this kitchen. My hidden world. The one she had no idea about. Funny, I murmured, letting the word hang between us like smoke. You always said I was nothing. Yet here I am, still standing. Her mouth opened, then shut like she was searching for the next stone to throw. I let my eyes wander deliberately around the room. The peeling wallpaper, the faded curtains she'd never bothered to replace, the faint mildew smell that clung to everything. Her kingdom. Her cage. I'd lived in it once, believing it was all I deserved. But not anymore. Standing, she scoffed. You're here because I allow it. Don't get smart with me. Without me you'd starve. That was when I almost laughed. Almost. I pressed my lips together instead and drew in a slow breath. She had no clue. She didn't know about the evenings filled with laughter that she'd never heard. The warmth of a hand that wasn't hers holding mine at night. The little voice that called me Mommy in the soft hours of morning. Her words could still bruise, but they couldn't erase what I had already built in secret. Still, I kept it tucked away out of sight like a card held close in a poker game. Starve. I tilted my head. Funny, I don't feel hungry. Her eyes sharpened, suspicion flickering like a match. She didn't like that answer. She didn't like that I wasn't cracking. She thrived on cracks. The air grew heavier, thick with her frustration. She tapped the table with her nails, one sharp click after another, like a metronome counting down to her explosion. Then she leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. Don't get clever with me. You think you're better? You're not. You'll always need me. Remember that. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I let her words drip into the silence. That's when I noticed it. The way her gaze slid just for a moment toward the hallway where the phone rested on its cradle. Her eyes lingered there longer than they should have. A chill crept up my spine. What was she planning? I shifted in my chair, suddenly alert. Something on your mind? I asked, my tone even. She jerked her eyes back to me, lips curling into a thin smile. Nothing you'd understand. My gut twisted. She was plotting something. The way she spoke, the way her hand lingered too close to the edge of the table as if ready to grab the phone at any second. The tick of the clock grew louder, each beat like a drum in my ears. I swallowed hard, forcing my face to remain calm. I couldn't let her see the storm inside me. Not yet. You seem restless, I said, tilting my head, pretending to study her. Is there something you're waiting for? Her smile widened, and for a second, I caught the glint of triumph in her eyes. She loved this game, the dangling of mystery, the illusion of control. I set the mug down carefully, the ceramic clinking against the wood. If you've got something to say, just say it. She leaned closer, her breath hot, sour with stale coffee. All in good time. Just remember, girl, you'll never win against me. Never. Her words lingered in the air, heavy and poisonous. I didn't look away. My eyes locked with hers, steady, unflinching. And for the first time I saw it. A flicker of doubt behind her bravado. A tiny crack in her armor. She thought she held all the cards. She didn't know about the one I'd been keeping close to my chest. But she would. That thought stayed with me even after I left her kitchen. The front door creaked shut behind me, the stale air of her house clinging to my clothes like smoke. Outside, the morning was brighter, fresher, as if the world wanted to remind me there was still life beyond her bitterness. I walked down the cracked sidewalk toward my car, my pulse still thumping from our face-off. I could feel her eyes burning through the lace curtains, watching, always watching. She loved to believe I had no place else to go. If only she knew the truth waiting for me beyond the bend in the road. The drive home was quiet. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Every mile I put between her house and mine loosened the knot in my chest. By the time I turned onto the narrow lane lined with oak trees, I felt like I could finally breathe again. There it was, our small house, paint peeling but warm with life. The front porch sagged a little, but a pair of children's boots by the step told the story of where my heart truly belonged. Inside, the smell of pancakes lingered. The faint sound of a cartoon hummed from the living room. And then his voice. Mommy. My son barreled into me before I could set down my purse, his little arms wrapping tight around my legs. I bent low, pulling him close, pressing my cheek against his hair. He smelled of syrup and soap, and in that instant every word my mother had spat at me dissolved. Hey sweetheart, I whispered. Did you behave for Daddy this morning? He nodded with exaggerated seriousness, though the sticky spot on his shirt told another story. From the kitchen my husband called, You're back earlier than I thought. I stepped inside, my heart softening at the sight of him standing by the stove, spatula in hand, flipping the last of the pancakes. His shirt was wrinkled, hair still damp from a rushed shower, but his smile was steady, my anchor in a storm my mother could never touch. Things got heated, I admitted, slipping into a chair. Same old story. He didn't press for details. He knew better than anyone how her words could twist inside me, leaving bruises no one else could see. Instead he set a plate in front of me, the pancakes slightly uneven but made with care. Eat first, he said softly. Talk after. I smiled faintly. He always knew what I needed before I asked. That was the difference. My mother never asked what I needed, only demanded what I owed. As I ate, I glanced around the room, the little signs of our life together surrounding me. A crayon drawing taped to the fridge. A cracked mug filled with daisies from our boy. A stack of unpaid bills on the counter, yes, but also a jar of coins we were slowly filling for a trip to the zoo. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was ours. He didn't know. Not about the man who chose me. Not about the child who lit up every dark corner of my heart. Not about the nights filled with laughter instead of shouting. And I intended to keep it that way. But secrets have a way of trembling at the edges. That afternoon, as I folded laundry in the bedroom, I caught my son fiddling with the phone in the hallway. His tiny fingers pressed random buttons, the glow of the screen reflected in his curious eyes. Sweetheart, don't play with that, I said, gently taking it from him. Phones aren't toys. He pouted but obeyed, scampering off to his toys. I placed the phone back in its cradle, unease prickling at the back of my neck. My mother's suspicious glance toward the hallway earlier that morning replayed in my mind. She knew I guarded something. And if my son ever managed to dial the wrong number. I shook the thought away. No sense borrowing trouble. That evening, after putting my boy to bed, I sat on the porch with my husband. The air was cool, crickets chirping in the grass. We didn't talk much, just listened to the quiet hum of night. Finally, I broke the silence. She knows I'm hiding something. He looked at me, concern etched across his face. Did you tell her? Of course not. I hugged my knees to my chest. But she saw it. The way I didn't break. She can smell weakness or strength. She'll dig until she finds it. He reached for my hand. Then we hold tighter. We don't give her an inch. His words steadied me, but deep down I knew the risk was growing. My mother didn't let go once she latched onto suspicion. She'd circle, pry, wait for the smallest crack. And the smallest crack in our armor might just be 5 years old, with curious fingers and no understanding of how much was at stake. The days that followed were filled with small joys. Reading bedtime stories, sharing cheap takeout on the couch, planting flowers in mismatched pots. Life went on, imperfect but whole. Yet every smile carried a shadow, the thought of her lurking like a storm cloud at the edge of the horizon. One afternoon, as I hung laundry on the line, I spotted her car slowly rolling past at the end of the lane. She didn't stop. She didn't wave. She just drove by, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. My chest tightened. She was circling. Watching. Waiting. I forced myself to keep pinning the clothes, hands steady though my stomach churned. I wouldn't let her see me rattled. When my husband came home that evening, I told him what I'd seen. His jaw tightened, but he didn't panic. Let her look. She can't touch us unless we let her. I wanted to believe that. But deep down I knew the truth. All it would take was one slip, one call, one accidental reveal, and the life I had fought so hard to build would no longer be mine alone. That night, as I tucked my son into bed, he whispered sleepily, "Mommy, can Grandma come here one day?" The words froze me. "Why would you say that?" I asked gently. "I just heard you talking about her. She sounds scary." He frowned. "But maybe she needs a hug." Tears stung my eyes as I kissed his forehead. "Not everyone deserves your hugs, sweetheart. Some people have to stay far away to keep us safe." He nodded, already drifting into sleep. I sat there in the dark a long time, watching his chest rise and fall, my heart heavy with the weight of secrets. Because the truth was simple. My mother would never stop until she uncovered what I'd hidden. And my boy, innocent, curious, loving, might be the very key she needed to unlock it. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep the doors locked. The phone buzzed in my hand, the vibration sharp against my palm. I had just set the cup of coffee down, steam rising in the dim light of the kitchen, when I saw her name flash across the screen. For a split second my thumb hovered, frozen. After all the venom she had spat across the table the night before, she should have been the last person I wanted to hear from. And yet some stubborn piece of me needed to know why she was calling. I answered with a steady voice, though my heart had already slipped into a nervous gallop. "What do you want?" Her laugh was brittle, slicing through the quiet morning. "You think you're smart, don't you? But you're nothing without me. Remember that." Her words echoed, hitting the walls of my kitchen, mixing with the smell of burnt toast I hadn't noticed until that moment. I gripped the counter's edge to steady myself. She was baiting me, daring me to react, daring me to crumble. But I refused to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I said softly, "If you're so certain of that, why are you the one calling me?" There was a pause too long for comfort. I heard her breathing, uneven, fast, before she finally hissed, "You'll see soon enough. I've already made my move." I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't just a threat. She sounded too confident, too satisfied. I kept my voice calm, though my fingers trembled against the countertop. "Then I suppose I'll be waiting," I said, and ended the call before she could gloat any further. For a moment I stood there, staring at the black screen of the phone. My reflection stared back at me, a woman with tired eyes, lips pressed tight, hair falling out of its clip. I felt the weight of years pressing down, but also something new stirring underneath. She thought she'd rattled me. She thought she'd cornered me. But she had forgotten one thing. I wasn't the woman I used to be. I tried to return to the quiet rhythm of my morning, buttering the toast, folding the paper left by the door, but every movement felt mechanical. My mind was stuck replaying her words. I've already made my move. Had she gone after my job? My reputation? Something worse? The coffee tasted bitter on my tongue. The clock ticked too loudly on the wall. Even the house itself seemed unsettled, shadows shifting where they shouldn't. I couldn't sit still. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside. The street outside looked the same. Children with backpacks rushing toward the bus stop. A neighbor waving as she carried her trash can to the curb. the mail truck rattling at the corner. Normal. Ordinary. Safe. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already slipped out of place. By noon, the silence became unbearable. I needed answers. I pulled out the folder I had hidden in the drawer beneath the old cookbooks. The folder she didn't know existed. Inside were notes, copies of emails, a small collection of things I had gathered quietly over the months. Things that painted a picture she thought she had buried deep. I flipped through the pages, my fingers brushing against the sharp corners of the papers. She believed she was always one step ahead. What she never realized was that I had been watching, listening, waiting. But was it enough? The thought nagged at me. She was bold now, reckless enough to taunt me openly. Maybe she had discovered something I hadn't. Maybe the balance had shifted. That afternoon the phone rang again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won. Hello. Static hummed before a man's voice cut in, clipped and serious. Is this Mrs. Carter? My chest tightened. Yes. Who's speaking? He hesitated. Let's just say, I work in a place where information passes through. And I thought you might want to know, she's digging deeper than you think. She's already set something in motion. If you don't stop her, you'll lose more than your pride. My grip on the phone tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't like seeing good people blindsided. And you're in her line of fire. His voice lowered. Be ready. The line went dead. I sat there, the silence of the room pressing in around me, the clock ticking again louder than before. My throat was dry. Who was that man? Was he playing some game of his own, or was this the warning I had been dreading? I rose from the chair, pacing the room. The sunlight had shifted, slanting through the blinds in sharp lines across the floor. Everything felt harsher, unforgiving. I thought of her words again, "You're nothing without me," and now, coupled with this stranger's warning, they took on a darker weight. What was she planning? I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, needing air. The chill of the wind caught me off guard, but it helped steady me. The street was quieter now, most neighbors gone for the day. My feet carried me to the corner store without much thought. Inside, the radio crackled faintly with country music, the smell of coffee and dust filling the air. I exchanged polite smiles with the clerk, trying to appear normal, but inside I was unraveling. As I waited at the counter, I noticed a folded newspaper headline. Local business faces audit after anonymous tip. My stomach dropped. Could that have been her doing? Was that the move she hinted at? I paid for my items quickly, hands shaking, and hurried back home. All afternoon I couldn't shake the sense of being watched. Every car that slowed near the house, every unfamiliar face on the street, I caught myself looking twice. By evening I had pulled the curtains shut and locked the doors, the folder of documents spread across my kitchen table. I studied every page, every note, searching for something I might have missed. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became. She wasn't just playing games anymore. She was dismantling things piece by piece, and she wanted me to know it. The call hadn't been about taunting me. It had been a declaration. A warning of what was already unfolding. And yet, I couldn't help but feel the tiniest flicker of grim satisfaction. Because while she believed she was shattering my control, she didn't know just how much I had kept hidden. That night, as I turned off the kitchen light and climbed the stairs, her words still haunted me. You're nothing without me. But in the quiet of my bedroom I whispered back into the dark, you've underestimated me. I slid the folder beneath the mattress, close enough to reach when the time came. Sleep wouldn't come easy, not with everything shifting beneath my feet, but I knew one thing for certain. The game wasn't over. And she wasn't the only one who had already made her move. You've underestimated me. Those words still echoed in the dark as I pulled the blanket higher around my shoulders, though sleep refused to come. I lay in the silence, every creak of the house sharper than usual, every gust of wind against the window rattling my nerves. And then came the knock. It wasn't loud, not at first, just a soft, deliberate tap at the front door. My breath caught. At that hour no one decent had business being there. I slipped out of bed, bare feet cold on the floorboards, and reached for the robe hanging from the chair. The folder still pressed under the mattress, heavy with secrets, gave me courage. The knock came again, harder this time. I descended the stairs slowly, each step groaning beneath my weight. The air smelled faintly of dust and wood polish, familiar and grounding, yet my pulse hammered so hard it nearly drowned out everything else. Through the peephole I saw him. Not her. Him. The face I hadn't seen in years. A face from another chapter of my life, one I thought I'd buried along with all the shame it carried. I opened the door just wide enough to see him properly. His hair was thinner, his shoulders stooped with age, but his eyes still carried that same calculating glint. "Hello, Margaret," he said softly, almost too gently, as though we'd parted on kind terms. I swallowed hard. "What are you doing here?" He glanced past me into the hallway, like he expected her to be lurking somewhere inside. "I heard things were unraveling. Thought I should stop by." Unraveling. The word scraped at me. So it wasn't just her. The past itself was closing in. "You shouldn't be here," I told him firmly, keeping my hand braced on the doorframe. "Not now. Not ever." But he only smiled, thin and knowing. "You'll want to hear what I've got to say. She's playing a dangerous game and you're right in the middle of it." I should have slammed the door. I should have told him I didn't need his warnings, his riddles, his presence dragging old wounds into the present. But something in his tone, the urgency threaded through the calm, stopped me. Against my better judgment, I let him inside. He stepped across the threshold, pausing like he was taking inventory of the life I had built without him. His gaze lingered on the framed photographs on the hallway table, on the coat rack, on the small details that screamed home. "Still keeping it tidy," he muttered, half to himself. I ignored the jab and led him to the kitchen. The overhead light buzzed faintly, casting everything in harsh yellow. I pulled 2 mugs from the cupboard, habit more than hospitality, and poured him coffee. We sat across from each other at the table, silence stretching until it hurt. Finally he leaned forward. "She contacted me." The words hit like a stone. I stared at him, the steam from my coffee curling between us. "She what?" He nodded slowly. "She wanted dirt. She thought I'd still be bitter enough to hand it over. But I told her no." "Why?" I demanded, suspicion thick in my voice. "You never did anything without expecting something back." He let out a humorless laugh. "Because I know her kind. She'd burn both of us just to keep warm. And because," his gaze dropped to his hands, scarred and weathered, "because I owed you. For how I left things." For a moment the kitchen seemed to tilt. Memories rushed in uninvited. The slammed doors, the accusations, the years of silence that followed. I tightened my grip on the mug. "You don't get to erase that with one warning." He met my eyes steadily. "I'm not asking forgiveness. I'm telling you she's desperate. She's reaching into the past to use against you. And if you're not careful, she'll twist everything." The conversation left me unsettled. I paced the kitchen while he sat still, watching. His presence alone stirred up emotions I had long forced into quiet corners. Regret, resentment, even the faintest trace of sorrow. "You think I don't know she's dangerous?" I snapped. "You think I haven't been preparing for this?" He tilted his head. "Then why did you look so scared when you saw me at the door?" The question cut deeper than I cared to admit. Because it wasn't just fear of her. It was fear of being dragged back into all the things I thought I had escaped. "You should go," I said finally, pointing toward the door. But before he moved, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table. "I shouldn't have this," he muttered. "But I do. And you'll want it." I unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It was a copy of something official. A record, a receipt, I couldn't be sure in the dim light. But my name was on it. And hers. "She's building a story," he explained, his voice low. "Something to make you look weak. To make you look guilty." The words blurred before my eyes. My chest felt tight, my heart pounding in my ears. She wasn't just trying to humiliate me anymore. She was trying to destroy me outright. I folded the paper again, tucking it into the pocket of my robe. "Why give this to me? Why now?" His jaw clenched. "Because she came knocking on my door first. And I saw the same fire in her eyes that I used to see in mine. I couldn't let her win. Not like this." For the first time since I opened the door, I believed him. Not entirely, not enough to trust him fully, but enough to know his warning was real. I walked him back to the front door. The night air spilled in, cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of rain. He lingered on the porch. "Margaret," he said softly, "be careful. She knows more than she lets on. And she's not afraid to use it." I closed the door without answering, leaning against it as my knees threatened to give way. The house was quiet again, but my mind was roaring. Back in my room, I pulled the folder from beneath the mattress and added the paper he'd given me to the pile. The stack was growing heavier now, almost too much to keep hidden. I sat on the edge of the bed, the lamp casting a pool of light on the floor, and tried to steady my breathing. Every part of me ached with the weight of what was happening. She had allies, she had schemes, and now even the ghosts of my past were being dragged into the present. But she had made one mistake. She thought the past would weaken me. She didn't realize it might just give me the final piece I needed. As I slid the folder shut, I whispered to myself, "This ends soon." And for the first time in days, I felt the faintest trace of resolve cutting through the fear. "This ends soon." Those were the words I whispered to myself in the dark, and by morning, I knew they weren't just a comfort. They were a promise. The folder lay heavy on the kitchen table, its edges frayed from nights of being pulled out, read, and hidden again. I stared at it as the sun rose through the curtains, painting the room in pale gold. Today felt different. Not because the fear was gone, but because I was done letting fear dictate the terms. I didn't have to wait long. By noon she came. Her knock wasn't timid this time. It rattled the door, sharp and commanding, like she still believed she had the right to enter my life without permission. I opened it before she could knock again. She stood there, chin high, eyes blazing. Behind her mask of defiance, though, I saw something new: desperation. "Are you going to let me in?" she demanded. "Or are you really that shameless?" I stepped aside without a word. Let her think she had won that first round. Let her think she was in control. We sat at the same kitchen table where she'd spat those words at me before. The folder rested between us, quiet but powerful, like a weapon no one could ignore. She saw it immediately, her eyes narrowing. "So it's true. You've been keeping secrets." I folded my hands calmly, though my heart pounded. "No. I've been keeping the truth. There's a difference." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Truth? You wouldn't know truth if it—" She cut herself off, glancing at the folder again. For the first time she looked uneasy. "You wanted to control me with lies," I said, my voice steady. "But the lies aren't mine. They're yours." She lunged forward, snatching the folder before I could stop her. Papers spilled across the table like a flood. Records, receipts, copies I'd gathered quietly over the years. Her face paled as she skimmed them. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. I leaned back in my chair. "I don't think. I know." For years she had painted me as weak, as unworthy, as nothing. She had whispered her version of me to neighbors, to relatives, to anyone who would listen. But now the evidence spoke louder than her venom. She shoved the papers aside, trying to recover her poise. "No one will believe you. They never have." I felt my lips curve into the smallest smile. "That's where you're wrong. Because they already do." At that moment the front door opened. My husband stepped in, our son trailing behind him with his school bag. The boy froze at the sight of his grandmother, sensing the tension like children always do. My husband set his hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "Everything all right here?" His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. She bristled, her authority slipping as she realized she wasn't facing me alone anymore. "I was just leaving," she muttered, pushing back from the table. But her eyes flicked to the folder, to the proof she couldn't burn or bury. "No," I said firmly, rising to my feet. "You're staying until I'm finished." She froze, stunned by the firmness in my voice. For the first time in my life I saw her falter. I gathered the scattered papers, stacking them neatly, then looked her dead in the eye. "You tried to make me small. You wanted me silent. You wanted me to believe I was unworthy of love, of family, of happiness. But look around you. I have everything you said I never would." My son clutched his bag, watching me with wide eyes. I softened my tone just enough for him. "And he will never know the pain you put me through. That cycle ends here." She scoffed, but it was weaker now, hollow. "You'll regret crossing me." "No," I answered quietly. "I'll regret waiting this long to stop you." Her threats spilled out one after another, but they no longer landed. Every word was a shadow stripped of power. I had evidence. I had love. I had the one thing she could never break: freedom. When she realized her fury had no place left to land, she grabbed her coat and stormed toward the door. But I followed, not to plead, not to apologize, but to finish what she had started. "You told me once I was nothing without you," I said, my voice low but steady. "But the truth is you're nothing without control. And you don't have it anymore." Her hand froze on the doorknob. For a brief moment her shoulders sagged, the weight of her own defeat pressing down. Then she yanked the door open and left, slamming it behind her. The silence afterward was thick, but it wasn't heavy. It was clean. Free. I turned to find my husband watching me, pride softening his expression. My son set down his bag and ran into my arms. His small weight against me was the anchor I needed. That night, after my boy was asleep and the house was quiet again, I sat at the kitchen table once more. The folder was still there, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was proof of survival, of resilience, of battles fought and won. I thought of the man who had warned me, of the twisted paths the past had taken to bring me here. Every piece had mattered, every wound had shaped the woman I had become. I poured myself a cup of tea and carried it to the porch. The air was cool, the night alive with the hum of crickets. For the first time in years I let myself breathe without fear clinging to my ribs. She could rage, she could plot, she could whisper whatever lies she wanted. None of it mattered anymore. Her chains had fallen away and I had no intention of picking them up again. Revenge hadn't come in a single dramatic blow. It had come slowly, quietly in the life I had built despite her. Every laugh with my son, every steady hand from my husband, every peaceful night's sleep was a victory she could never undo. And in the end that was the sweetest revenge of all. Not her destruction but my freedom. I sipped my tea watching the stars and felt a calm I hadn't known in decades. She would carry her bitterness like a stone around her neck, but I was done carrying mine. I had chains once, heavy and cruel, forged from her words and her control. But they were broken now, and I would never wear them again. If this story gripped your heart, imagine the journeys still waiting to be told. Subscribe now, because you deserve to hear every voice that once was silenced, and every revenge that turns pain into power.